Okay, guys, the time is 4:02, and we're all present. Thank you. Would you say we call this meeting to order?
Will there be an invocation?
Do we have a motion to call the meeting to order?
I'd so move. Father in heaven, please bless our meeting today and those of us that are meeting with our public officials for representation in the public bodies of leadership that help define our community. Lord, we want harmony and we want to protect our children, and that's our goal. Please help us do that, I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
As for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Well, let's address our consent agenda.
Terry, on page 1 of the voucher register, there's a conference fee for $497. Was that in person or remote? It's for YALSA, Y-A-L-S-A.
That was remote.
Federal Bank.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda passed. Moving on to the next item. Would you like to?
Sure, I'll talk about item 1 on unfinished business. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
This is our COVID-19 report. As of November 16th, Wyoming's infection rate has improved considerably. The 7-day active case dropped from 292.9 to 186.3, which is a 36% decrease, so it's moving in the right direction. Campbell County has 135 active confirmed and probable cases, down from 440 last month, which is a huge change. Looking at our usage and how it's impacted by COVID, our library use is similar to last year's usage. Patron visits are up 3%, while circulation is down 3%. Would you like me to move into the next item, or does anybody have any questions?
By all means.
Number 2, reconsideration of library materials progress report. So all patrons submitting a form in August and September have received a response letter. Of all the forms submitted, 84% have received a response letter. A summary follows, and so we are up to having received, as of November 17th, 56 consideration forms, and on October 20th, we had 53. The number of first response letters sent is 47 on November 17th, compared to 32 on October 20th. The unique titles that we've addressed so far is 21, 16 on October 20th. The number of unique titles challenged is 29, up 2 from 27. The number of unique people submitting a form is 17, up 2 from 15. The number of books moved from the young adult section to the adult section remains the same. 2 books were moved. The number of books to remain in the current collection is 19, up 5 from 14 last month. And the number of books appealed to the library board is now at 8, although that has a potential to go up again. I have some appeals that have come to the director since I put out this report to you. But I'm still working on that. So we're up 7. We have some scheduled today and some scheduled in December. I would like to take this opportunity to clear up some confusion and some misinformation that has been circulating, just trying to help people understand the book Lawn Boy. So the book Lawn Boy by Jonathan Evison has been challenged, and this book is classified as adult fiction, and it's shelved in the adult fiction collection. Now there is another book called Lawn Boy by Gary Paulson that is housed in the juvenile fiction collection. And what we're finding and what I'm hearing is a lot of people think that this book is shelved in the children's department, and it is not. This book is. So there is clearly some confusion on this title, and I just wanted to reassure everybody that the adult fiction book, Lawn Boy by Jonathan Evison, has been and always will be contained in our adult fiction department. It started out there on day 1. So just so you know, in case there's any confusion, this isn't in the children's department. That's all I've got.
Very good. Any questions or comment on those items of unfinished business? Let's move on to new business. The first item is 2022 library holiday hours and other closures.
This is a schedule that the library board approves every year. It includes holidays approved by the county commissioner's office, as well as, because we're open 7 days a week, there are some other days that were closed that are not paid holidays. And this list is a list of those closures. And it will need approved by the library board. Do you have any questions about it?
Are there any changes to this from last year as far as which days are off? Obviously the dates are different, but the number of days that the library is closed for a given closure. Are there any changes there?
This is basically similar to what we submit every year following the same format.
I move to approve the 2022 calendar. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the 2022 calendar. All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion passes. The next item up for discussion is committee formation. This is a follow-up to the October meeting in discussing the appeal to the board with the book. There was a motion made at that time to consider creating a committee, and this item is on here for that purpose. Is there anything that you need to add to that, Terry?
No, I just, I guess it's a good time to talk about forming the committee. If so, if the motion was to include board members and staff.
I would be interested in serving on that. Since our last meeting, I've conducted extensive research on shelving practices, speaking with several librarian friends from all across the country, many of whom do work in the teen area. So I feel I have a little more expertise since I posed that question last month, so I would be interested in continuing that work if any library staff would join me.
Well, I would, of course, and I could assign another person.
Great. I could help.
So I think the question for us to answer is, do we want to form this committee, and if so, what is the makeup of the committee? Is that accurate, or does anyone have other thoughts or ideas or questions?
Can someone refresh my recollection on what do we have a purpose for the committee, a mandate, what are we gonna do?
The question I had asked is if it's standard practice to move books regarding sexuality of young people into the adult area, if that's a common practice in libraries across the country. So I've done my own research, but I don't have the library expertise that Terry and her team have. I've spoken to several librarians, but that's still not my purview.
So the motion was from the last meeting in October. Miranda made a motion to establish a committee comprised of library board members and library staff to determine a potential place upstairs to house the parenting books.
Oh, these were for the parent.
Yeah,
Oh,
and for the teenage sexuality books as well. Yeah, if it's standard to move those.
Was there some discussion on the parenting books of trying to get some input from people that we had worked with before to move them
People who use
downstairs
the
in the first
collection,
place?
right?
Yeah, so our parenting collection in the children's department was located there. It was once an adult nonfiction. Parents requested it there. So we are planning a survey to see if parents would like to move it, or perhaps we could better shelve it higher up or something like that. So we were gonna do a survey to see what the parents wanted, since this is more of a customer service issue than a censorship issue. It's simply a matter of making it easy for parents to get to this information, and where is that best location.
We know that the library is at capacity, so is there room in the adult nonfiction area to move those parenting books?
That's something we could certainly look at. 2 shelves, but there's a lot of different ways we could look at it.
Great.
So I think if I'm understanding correctly, a piece of this is going forward under your direction in the form of a customer service survey regardless. And so the question is it beneficial and desirable for us to have board members and staff work together on this? Is that correct? Is that the motion? That we previously had? Do we know if anything like this exists in other libraries in neighboring counties or within the state?
Like parenting collections?
A committee that helps advise the staff and director on the customer service piece of this.
No, I was recently at a director's meeting, and nobody had done that before.
we establish this as a committee, is that something that's enduring or something that's temporary and can be used on an as-needed basis? How do those work?
I think temporary.
Terry, when do you plan to send the survey to parents?
We have prioritized addressing the challenges.
Oh, sure, okay.
So as soon as, I think we're getting close to having a handle on that, so probably soon.
Thank you.
Terry, do you have a sense from the library staff if they feel that that would be beneficial to have board involvement?
Well, I feel like we, as a staff, feel pretty comfortable and confident in making a decision like this, but if, you know, a board member would like to be a part of that, we of course would accept that. Perhaps we could just maybe have a introductory meeting to decide if it's really something that we need to move forward with, and start there. Or what does the rest of the board think? I'm open to serving at your pleasure.
I'm not opposed to having a committee if you feel the need is out there. I think that the jobs that you do because that's what you're trained to do, is I think you guys do a good job going through the channels as you were trained to administer the library, but I'm not opposed to a committee either.
Yeah, I think that would pretty much sum up my position as well. I think I like the idea of canvassing the customers, to see what they want to do with the parenting books, and keeping an eye on, you know, consistency with where things are shelved. And I have no objection to the formation of the committee to do that.
I agree, particularly if we have board members who are willing and able, and that it's viewed as a positive action on the part of the staff and not something that's stepping on toes or taking away those decisions that are being made.
Sounds good to me. It sounds like Mandy and I.
So, yeah, our bylaws have you as the person that would appoint the committee. And so if you want my suggestions for staff, I'll jump in or wait, whatever you'd like to do, in deciding whether or not we have a committee first, I suppose.
One question, did you move to refer this to a committee at the last meeting, or is that still to be done at this meeting?
The motion was to establish, and it passed. So I believe that with that standing and everyone having an opportunity to have discussion and looking into it, I would say absolutely, let's move forward with that, however that needs to look. If you want to recommend people from the staff, and then I think it'd be lovely for you guys to do that. Everyone seems on board.
Okay, well, I would suggest myself, and since Darcy's doing a bulk of the work with the parenting collection, I would suggest Darcy Acorn.
And that gives us 4 people on the committee. This would not be a voting committee, correct? This is an advisory committee.
Right, we'll come back and report next month.
Okay, I consider those people appointed to the committee.
I'll arrange a meeting.
Thank you. And thank you for volunteering. All right, shall we move on to the next item? Public communication options.
As you know, we do have some different suggestions on how the board can be contacted. And so if you have any ideas of how, I'm sure this is for discussion for all of you, but I can tell you that right now, the county has a board and agenda site, a place where there's a button that you can click to send a message that will get to the library board. There's one recipient, and if that recipient responds from their email, the member of the public would then have their email. So that's how it stands right now, and so it, however, Holly, you want to move forward for discussion on it?
Sure, and I'll kind of speak to a piece of that too. So since our last board meeting, this is a form that went live on the county website. And in talking with them, as Terry said, it's designed to go to one email address. In the past, there had been some discussion about whether that would be a county-provided email address or a personal email address. When that went live, those are currently going to Terry's email because we had simultaneously had our own query of opinions about how this would happen. So I asked that it be put on here for discussion so that we could cover all those bases at once. If we, there are some pieces to it that in talking with some of the commissioners and as well as some of the people in the county commissioner office, the idea behind this is to allow people to contact without violating privacy of board members. And in that interest, I think we had an array of different opinions about what that could look like. One of my personal concerns is that this is pushing out, my understanding is that it's pushing out to 6 of the county boards, but not all of them. Some of those are having it go to the board chair. But as you all know, we typically serve for a year. And so then we have these emails that are considered public correspondence. And if I'm not mistaken, would be subject to freedom of information requests that you then are personally responsible for. And so I think we have the opportunity to decide, do we want to create a personal email that we rotate off to the next chair each time, or what do we think is appropriate? Do we think it's appropriate for it to go to the director? And also to make sure that we understand the purpose of it, I suppose, if there are questions that we need to maybe take back.
Carrie, when they come to you, do you send them on to all of us?
Yes, I don't think it was working at first because I wasn't receiving anything and they were sending tests and the tests weren't coming through. So last week I mentioned it and somebody did a reset and then a test one did come through. So now it's working. The test one came from a county employee who sent it to me to make sure that I got it. I have not received any since then, just the one test. If I do get something though, I would just forward to the library board, kind of like I do now.
Have you had any discussions with county IT or with the commissioners about providing email addresses through the county for board members?
Yes, I have had that discussion. I've even asked that they price it out for me because there's an expense to it, but I haven't heard back on that. It doesn't seem to be completely supported, that I can tell.
chose to respond. And then at that point, that person would have our email address if we responded to them, correct? It wouldn't go.
Right, so if you respond, you would want to use the email address that was provided in the email. Instead of responding to me, you would have to go that step. But then, yes.
Well, Madam Chairman, I would think that we can see how the current situation works. And if we've had a grand total of no emails so far, real hard to tell how this process is going to work. So I say let it go for a while and just see what does happen.
Any other thoughts or questions on it? One of the things that an interesting piece of it that it brings up, and you may be able to speak to this, it may already be happening, but I'm not sure how you know if you're getting feedback from a Campbell County resident in that situation, right? Like, how do we know if those are valid and how to address those? But as Charlie said, grand total of 0. So I guess we can cross that bridge when we get there. If everyone good with that, and we'll plan on forwarding all those out to each of us, responding in kind. Okay, I don't think we need a motion on any of that.
So our process then will be for me to continue to forward. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, December board meeting, optional joint meeting with the county commissioners.
Yes, the county commissioners have kindly set up an awesome chance for us to have good communication between our board and the commission. And it's optional. They don't want to have a meeting unless we have something to discuss. So December is our optional chance to have a joint meeting with the county commissioners. And so we need to decide if we'd like to have the meeting, and if so, what our agenda items would be.
Well, we have, so far we have, 2 books to review at the next meeting?
3 books.
Or there are 3?
So the way this meeting works is it's a meeting with the commissioners that is held and then disperses, and then we go into our regular meeting. So I think it might, that's a good point, is how much time would it take to also have a meeting with the commissions? That's a good point.
Because I know we've talked to them a little bit about, I mean, we could give them an update on where we are with the book appeals. They're certainly very interested in that, as they should be. We could send them a memo if they don't want to have actually have a meeting, give them pretty much the same information. We've had some discussion, occurs to me, on possible changes to the appeal process, and we haven't discussed that. One of the ones for tonight, there's a 1-month gap between sending out your letter to the patron and that person indicating they want to file an appeal. And it would seem to me that we can, one thought I have is that we can shorten that time frame by saying you have to file your appeal in 2 weeks or a week, or whatever it is, rather than just leaving it open-ended. So I think it is open-ended under the rules, and I don't think that's a good idea. And then in the first one we did, if you'll recall, the person challenging the book wanted to give us and gave us some additional information at the time of the hearing. And I would myself like to have something in the rules to talk about that and give them a time, time limit when they can. I don't have any problems with them filing additional materials. I have a big problem with them filing at the hearing, because nobody'd have a chance to look at it and, have a response if that's appropriate. So those are two things that I've seen that might be useful to address, but maybe that's premature. I don't know anybody else.
I tend to agree. I think that the purpose of the appeal process being on a form, which we talked about quite a bit back in the summer, was so that we understand the position of the person who's concerned that it might not be being placed based off of library policy. And I agree that it is difficult to discern that in the moment. So I think it would be nice if there was some kind of framework that allowed us to have that information in the appeal packet.
Yeah, there's several things to consider in reworking our policy, and some of it I'm kind of waiting to hear back from legal resources. So until I get some responses there, I was kind of waiting to start tackling that policy. But I think you guys all make good points. Good thing to discuss at some point. I just don't think we're quite ready to put it on the agenda yet.
Terry, what about the collection policy and procedures? I know we had some questions from the commissioners about that. Would that be something we want to address then? You and I talked about visiting, and I don't know if we want to add it then or wait on that as well.
We could certainly visit, but before we start having a board visit, before we take any action, I do need a few things to come back in to help us proceed. We might even want to consider a workshop when the time is right.
So I think what I'm hearing from everyone is that we don't have any pressing matters that need to be discussed with the commissioners for this December meeting. And we do have some appeals on there, so in the interest of time and the interest of preparation for those topics, we'll tentatively plan for addressing those with them in the first quarter, which will give us opportunity for a workshop. And then in some pieces of that might be able to be just communication to them as a memo, which they might appreciate. And we can kind of feel that out as we work through the process. Do we need a motion on the optional joint meeting, or is that just decision?
No, just discussion and decide whether to proceed or not, so.
Any other discussion with that? The questions or concerns? The next item of new business is reconsideration of library materials appeal. We'll be hearing a request for consideration from Ms. Helen Hayden on 4 books. They're in the packet that was distributed. So what I'd like to do for this is allow Terry the floor for a moment to summarize some of the background information.
So would you like me to go title by title and just pause and let Mrs. Hayden speak and then hit the next title, or would you like me to hit everything at once?
Maybe whatever Mrs. Hayden is more comfortable with. Would you prefer title by title or all of them?
Yeah, let's do that. Well, or I can make a comment on all of them after she's done.
I currently have it organized title by title because that's how the reconsideration forms are. But there is some repetitiveness that I could try to just refer to in a more shorthand way on the second, third, and fourth titles. Does that sound okay?
Do any other board members have a preference or opinions on it? I think if Ms. Hayden's okay with either way, I would say let's go title by title, and we can just kind of do that piggyback on a previous mention, and that way we're staying targeted. Does that work?
Sounds good. So I will begin with the first title on our list, Mary Wears What She Wants by Keith Nedley. Mrs. Hayden listed some concerns in her reconsideration form of introducing concepts of transgenderism and cross-dressing. And in the manager response, it was determined that the book, which is a children's picture book, the manager's response was to retain the collection in the children's picture book section. So the Campbell County Public Library's collection development policy states that a singular obligation of a public library is to reflect within its collection differing points of view on controversial or debatable subjects. And while you have every right to read or not check out an individual book, the inclusion of this title in a diverse collection is intended to meet a wide variety of patron reading interests and is entirely appropriate. This book is a children's picture book. Transferring the book to another part of the library is, in effect, removing it from the audience for which it is intended and is therefore censorship. Our professional resources recommend this book for ages 4 to 8, so it is appropriately placed in the easy fiction section. That collection includes just over 20,000 titles, so there are other options for readers who choose not to read this one. Mary Wears What She Wants tells the biographical story of Mary Edwards Walker, a war-decorated physician who practiced during the Civil War and through the 19th century. As a girl, Walker discovered that she preferred wearing pants and refused to wear dresses thereafter. The story is based on fact, however, there is no content referring to cross-dressing or transgenderism. The young Walker preferred pants, perhaps in the same way many female children growing up in Wyoming do. In looking at Mary Wears What She Wants in terms of reviews, it is favorably reviewed by professional reviewers from Booklist, Bighorn Guide, and Publishers Weekly. Mrs. Hayden, we met to discuss the book she wanted to appeal, and we met on October 18th, and we talked about Mary Wears What She Wants, and I wanted to make sure that you still felt that this was a challenge that you wanted to go forward with, and I know you feel very strongly about this book still. I know that your interpretation might be unique, and but you have still assured me that you want to appeal this book, which we respect that. So after talking to you and thinking over what you said and what the manager before said, I felt that the public library represents all people in the community, and there are a variety of strong opinions on the places of our books. As a public library, we are committed to neutrality, and so we use our collection development policy as our guide. So I went to our collection development policy. And Mary Wears What She Wants falls within the parameter of our collection development policy and is cataloged properly in the children's collection. So I agree that the book should be retained in the children's picture book collection. So that's where I am with that. And that's the bulk of the information that I had to review.
Thank you, Terry. I think before we allow Ms. Hayden perhaps to speak to some of that, any questions or discussion for Terry on the part of board members?
How long has that book been in the library's collection?
Let me look. See if I have it in my notes here. I have it in some notes somewhere. I think the copyright date, do you know, Darcy, off the top of your head?
I do not, I can look for you, but.
No, that's okay. I want to say 2017, 2018, something like that. But I will verify that with you later.
I read the book, it struck me as a perfectly acceptable little kid's book. I didn't see anything myself that was controversial at all. That was my take.
The book presents it as a little girl wanting to be able to be more active, do cartwheels, run around, and it presents Pants as her ability to do that. Like you said, it's based on a real woman. That woman would say, I don't wear men's clothes, I wear my clothes. So I don't see an intentional cross-dressing message, but I do want to hear your interpretation.
Anything from the other board members? I think let's move on then and allow, one of the things I'd like to know, Ms. Hayden, is just sort of the explanation of, I tend to agree, I felt like it was about a little girl wearing pants, and found nothing else in there that seemed concerning for cross-dressing or transgenderism. Would you like to speak to which section you thought?
Well, first it starts in the book, boys clothes, girls clothes, and then I felt like it was being breakdown of the family, being disrespectful and blatant in rebellion, because she says, I'm not wearing boys' clothes, I'm wearing my clothes. Now, if you'll excuse me, please, I'm late for school. And then at the very end, it crosses out boys or girls' clothes, it just clothes. And maybe in New York and California it'd be okay, but we live in a cowboy state, and I don't think that the cowboys are really kind of like seeing a man in a dress, or even the drag queens in the clubs. So when you're crossing out the boys and girls' clothes, that's saying that the boys can wear a dress if they want to. And like I said, I don't think cowboys are gonna like that too well.
Thank you, Ms. Hayden. Questions or discussion, points of clarification?
Just to make sure, because I did read the book, I think a month ago, it doesn't feature boys in dresses in the book, right?
Right.
As far as the piece about breakdown of families, the comment you read, she actually said to the other children at the schoolyard, because they were blocking her path and challenging her on the way to school. When she spoke with her father about it in the book, he had no objection to it, so that wasn't actually an interaction with them either. So I'm wondering if that was kind of a piece of the interpretation there with the tone. Any other comments or questions? Do you guys want to, since we're handling each of these one at a time, should we make a motion and vote for this book and then move on to the next?
Yeah.
Okay. We have 5 members this time, so we can, I would like to hear a motion, please, in a positive form, not a double negative term.
I'm perfectly happy to make a motion to grant the appeal. I'm gonna vote against it, but that's a positive motion, so that you have to have a majority of votes to grant an appeal, so it should be a positive motion, so you don't get, we don't get confusion over what the outcome is. That's my motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to grant the appeal, which requests moving the book to the library. All in favor of the motion to grant the appeal, say aye. All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Nay. The motion does not pass. Let's move on to the next one, Mina.
This is the book Mina. So, to start, I will read from the request for reconsideration of library materials that Helen, can't talk today, that Helen filled out, and so these are her concerns for this book. And this is Mina by Sign Van Mol. This book is inappropriate for children, encourages name-calling and disrespect, encourages power of suggestion, as a parent, what would you do if after reading this book, your child tried to eat a toad, dead or alive, or worse, yet cut themselves to see what it was like to drink blood? So the book was reviewed by the manager, and she made some similar points about the collection development policy, stating that a singular obligation of public library is to reflect within its collection different points of view on controversial or debatable subjects. So patrons have the right to not read or check out any individual book. The inclusion of this title in a diverse collection is intended to meet a wide variety of patron reading interests and is entirely appropriate. This book is also a children's picture book. Reshelving the book in another part of the library is in effect removing it from the audience for which it is intended, and is therefore censorship. Professional resources recommend this book for ages 4 to 9, so it is appropriately placed in the easy fiction section. That collection includes over 20,000 titles, so there are other options for readers who choose not to read this one. This book won the USBBY Outstanding International Book Award for grades K through 2 in 2012. USBBY is the United States Board on Books for Young People. It's a nonprofit organization. In this story, Mina tells of 3 children who invent stories about an old woman living in their neighborhood, that she is a witch, eats toads, and drinks blood. However, her granddaughter visits her every day, a fact which the neighborhood children attribute to being under a spell. Through the story, the granddaughter corrects their various misinterpretations, including that a bucket of red liquid is actually cherry juice, not blood. The woman, Mina, turns out to be a kind woman who bakes delicious cherry pies, and the children learn an important lesson about making snap judgments. The story is an example of how juvenile literature teaches life's lessons through narrative. This book was also favorably reviewed by Booklist, Kirkus Reviews, and Publishers Weekly. Kirkus Reviews says it offers a provocative look at the trajectory between snap judgments and hateful behavior when both are fueled by fear. So we did meet and talk about this book also on October 8th and discussed it. And I know that you still had concerns, although that the liquid was cherry juice, that it might still be interpreted as blood. And a toad was mentioned in by a child in a kind of sing-songy way talking about witches, and you still were concerned about the toads. Again, this is a unique viewpoint, and I once again considered everything that you had to say and what the manager had written, and I felt that again, there are a lot of differing opinions about what should and should not be in our library, so I have to go to our collection development policy. And this book does fall within the parameters of our collection development policy. It's cataloged properly in our children's collections, and so I supported the decision not to move the book.
Any questions or discussions? Hearing none. Ms. Hayden, would you like to speak to
Sure.
particularly power or suggestion that, in this respect, that you were concerned about in the book?
Well, in the book it says, did the witch put a spell on you? Children like to mimic, they like to play house, so they could start trying to practice like they're a witch. Introduces concepts of that. It could cause emotional distress if they're not ready for it, and could have nightmares. But yeah, you know, if they started trying to act like a witch and trying to eat toads and drink blood because they read it in the book, yeah, that concerns me, because the parents do the best they can, but that doesn't mean a kid doesn't act out. There's even a story of some young man who took a friend, I don't remember if it was a friend or a new person in school, took him to the forest and beat him with a bat to see what it was like. So yeah, I'm concerned, because it only takes one child to try this out. And then if they start cutting themselves and seeing blood, then that's not a good thing.
Thank you. Hearing that, any discussion?
When I read the book, I didn't see the witch at the forefront. My focus was on the children, how they behaved toward their neighbor, the very mean things they said to her, which you do mention in your form. And then we see how the children change once they figure out she's not a witch. This to me isn't a witch-focused book, but again, that's my interpretation. Certainly, others can disagree.
I think the end of the story, it ends well, it has a good moral to the story, but I think the name calling in the middle, you know, I try real hard to teach my kids, make fun of people and call names, and I think that's part of where I'm hung up on it for me.
The name calling piece, I think, reflects what a lot of children do. I mean, ideally, when we get older, we stop doing that, right? But like Yandy said, there's a nice moral in the end. They're all friends and they all understand each other. I move to approve the appeal.
We have a motion to approve the appeal. Can I get a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of granting the appeal, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no?
No.
The motion does not pass. The third book is Transmission, My Quest to a Beard by Alex Purdy.
May I help her with this book, because she didn't have time to finish?
And she also wanted to bring this before the board too. She just wasn't able to do it today. Wasn't able to. And personally, I think that's only fair.
Pardon?
Personally, I think that's only fair because she wanted to discuss this book before you guys too. And once you make a decision, you say that's fine.
Is that accurate, Terry?
It just came in, so I haven't
Okay.
shared it. yet with you.
I'm in favor of whatever the will of the board is on this.
As long as we can still keep things relatively brief, I have no problem with.
I haven't had a chance to respond to her yet, but I think it's fine, whatever the
Okay.
will of the board wants to do is fine.
Has she seen, has Mrs. Sisti seen the response that you gave to Mrs. Hayden on the transmission book?
No, I'm at the point where I need to respond to Mrs. Sisti. I got this last week and have not finished going through. There were several books and I haven't gone through all of them yet, so I'm trying to get a response put together, but I haven't done it yet.
That would be the concern I would have with, and I'm not opposed to letting Mrs. Sisti speak now rather than come back and go over the same book again.
Usually
It's just that our procedure says that you need to make an appeal to the board, and I don't know how long.
Well, what I would say would have nothing to do with what her reason was anyway. 'Cause
Well, that makes it much
I'm
easier.
coming from a different camp.
So I would say
It's
that
up to you.
typically the decision of the board is final. So if you want to table it, or I would say we would either need to table it, or if you want to hear it, or go ahead and let her speak, one or the other, because once a decision is made, our decision is final.
Ms. Hayden, you haven't finished the book?
Well, I just figured that I could point something out she could too, because she wanted to appeal this too.
Well, I guess I'm wondering if you would like to finish the book, and then could we discuss it in our December meeting in the table? Since I think we've all read it.
Whatever you want to do.
I would move to table discussion of transmission to our December 2020 meeting.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second to table the discussion about transmission. Does anyone need any discussion before we do that? I think my question would be, well, what precedent does this set? Are we going to be able to accommodate that going forward?
May I?
Correct.
We could take care of the book today instead of putting it off for
Yeah.
December.
Since it was Ms. Hayden's challenge.
So if she wants to go,
Or if she wants to finish it, or if she'd rather finish it today or come back, she's gonna have to come back and listen as well.
we're just concerned about policy and precedent, so I'm more comfortable tabling it until we have the paperwork.
You know, your voice isn't carrying. I wonder if this, and also Mandy, I've heard that the audience.
Thanks.
So there's a motion in a second, right? So
I apologize. I thought we were still in discussion about it.
I'm
before.
sorry.
I'm just in reading through Ms. Hayden's challenge on there, looking at the.
I'm fine with it if you want to wait till December.
I don't have any further questions. All in favor of tabling the book, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no?
No.
No. Three in favor and 2 opposed. The motion carries. So let's continue on. The next book is The V Word by Amber Kaiser.
Can you hear me okay?
Everyone needs to be louder.
Everybody needs to be louder?
Well, we can hear you, but we can't hear the others.
Okay, thank you. I'll project. So I have before me Helen Hayden's request for reconsideration of library materials on the V Word by Amber Kaiser. Her concerns are listed as follows. Teens are not considered adults until 18 or 21. Abortions are not allowed unless with parental permission. Therefore, teens should not be encouraged in any type of sex, straight, queer, LGBTQ+. First time with a partner should be meaningful and the partner feeling honored and special that they are the first on their wedding day. Next, I'll go into the manager response and some similarities again. Our collection development policy states that a singular obligation of a public library is to reflect within its collection differing points of view on controversial or debatable subjects. So patrons have every right to not read or check out any individual book. And we do feel it is our mission to provide a diverse collection intended to meet a wide variety of patron reading interests, and that our choices are entirely appropriate. Additionally, young adult nonfiction books about controversial topics serve the educational research needs of secondary students. And in the field of library science, we often look at information-seeking behavior of our patrons to understand how they seek information and how they learn. This book is written as an informational resource for adolescents, and so transferring it removes it from the audience for which it is intended and is considered censorship. The title is well reviewed by several professional library journals, including Publishers Weekly, Kirkus Reviews, Book List, and School Library Journal. These reviews recommend this title to grades 10 through 12 and ages 14 and up, which is consistent with the target audience of the young adult collection. The book is a collection of stories about youth and their first sexual encounters. The ages of the people in each chapter range from 15 to 22, with the majority being between 16 and 18. The material and the ages of the subjects in the book are relevant to the information needs of adolescents. Overall, the material touches on all types of first-time sexual encounters, including a chapter of a woman who waited until marriage to have sex for the first time. We believe the material does not encourage sex, but covers any circumstances in which sex could occur, providing information that would be helpful to youth with questions on this topic. Just a quick overview of some of the teen-seeking behaviors. Teens do not feel their life concern information needs are adequately met by school resources. And I am quoting studies here, and if anybody would be interested in more information on these studies, please get in touch. Teens view lived experience as credible information and often feel that authoritative sources such as parents and teachers do not have adequate lived experiences to answer their life concern information needs. So I think that what that's saying is they're looking for information from a source that actually can answer their questions. Teens need access to a variety of resources about sex. The public library can help fill that need. Teens have questions about sex that are not always answered by school curricula. And teens prize privacy, confidentiality, and awareness of resources in answering their sex education information needs. Mrs. Hayden, this is another book that we talked about on October 18th. And again, I did give this a lot of consideration, and I did feel that it falls within the parameters of our collection development policy, and that it's cataloged properly as a young adult book. And so my decision is that the books would not be moved. This particular book would not be moved.
Thank you, Terry. Questions or discussions before?
I did pull data on the book. Data is very important to me in making these decisions, because if our library is the only library in Wyoming or the region to house this book in the YA, that to me would suggest we're doing something wrong. So I looked at the WorldCat data. In our region, 14 libraries have this book in their collection. 3 of those 14 libraries house it in adult nonfiction, or they house it in Overdrive, which is an ebook. So 11 regional libraries keep it in the YA area, which again, as Terry said, that is the audience it was written for. And I think there's a really powerful passage toward the end, before they start talking about resources for parents. The writer said, "Talking doesn't mean doing. Contrary to what some believe, learning about sex does not make teenagers run out and hook up with the first available partner. Rather, research shows that good sex education actually delays the onset of sexual activity," and she cites the study. I think that's something important to keep in mind. One more thing I guess I could point out as well. She interviews a woman who is a teen media specialist, and she specifically says that we need more teen media on choosing virginity. There's a lack of that. More of it's needed.
Thank you, Miranda. Anyone else?
I think my continued concern is that this is for grades 10 to 12, and ages 15 and up, and our YA section is completed 6th grade through 12. And so it's still that middle ground we have there where it's being exposed to those kids that are younger. And I think that's, we address that with Commissioner Faber's book, but I think that's kind of applies here as well.
And I just wanted to make sure it was clear it's 7th through 12th grade, not 6th grade. And so that is our young adult collection, and so we do fall back on our parents to review the works of their children if they have concern, the things that are checked out. And there is an app where a parent can connect to their child's library card. So we feel like we have that covered, but I mean, you make some good points. I understand what you're saying. Just wanted to correct on the 7th grade, so.
Thank you both.
I think it's obvious that this book,
Yeah.
okay, I think it's obvious that this book serves a need that people in this age group, I vaguely remember being in this age group, deal with questions like this sort of thing. I found it a very awkward book to read, I'll tell you that, but at the same time, I thought it was very clear. I thought it didn't encourage anything particularly. I thought it tried to address options that people, mostly girls, have at this point in their lives. I thought that was pretty important. So I thought definitely this has a target audience, and moving it to the adult section would effectively move it away from the audience for whom the book was designed in the first place.
The book also addresses a wide range of sexual encounters, including young women who regretted sleeping with someone too early. I think that's a valuable lesson. Young women who were drunk and never should have had a sexual encounter. I think that's important information for girls to know, that you do have to protect yourself.
I think that brings up a good point, that the different interpretations of the stories, what one might see as encouraging a particular activity, others see as discouraging. I thought there were plenty in there that could be cautionary tales that were speaking of real consequences, and it wasn't a forward-thinking, it wasn't someone supposing, it was people talking about things that they had actually done and how they processed it. Anything else before Ms. Yates? Would you like to speak to your piece of that?
Well, number one, I didn't need a book on sex when I was younger, And then we're back to, everyone's saying, oh, it's the adults, the parents' responsibility, and if that's correct, then yes, they should be buying the book. If their family the teenager needs more information, then the parent should be buying it, because it is their responsibility. And you guys say that you buy books from, that the American Library Association suggests, but if your mother told you to jump off the bridge, are you gonna do that? Just because the American Library Association says it might be a good idea? It says first time sex. There's only one married one in there. Example, losing it, popping your cherry, handing in your V card. Oh, and I think the V is supposed to be for virgin. First time sex is a big unknown. Will it be candlelight and rose petals or quick and uncomfortable? Is it about love or about us? Lust. You have plenty of people telling you what to do, but do you have anyone telling you what sex is really? The V word pulls back the sheets on sex, queer and straight, relished and regretted, funny and exhilarating. Oh, write about first time sex, hot, meaningful, cringe-worthy, gross, unforgettable, magnificent, empowering, transformative. This stuff is not acceptable for teens. They don't need to be knowing it. Maybe if they're in college and their parents haven't told them, maybe in college they could do it, get more information. Know how to talk about it. Pick your words, vagina, pussy. This is stuff that we don't allow kids to say in a normal setting, let alone in a book.
That's right.
Oh, a TV. If I was on TV, I couldn't be talking about this. I can't even talk about it at the county commissioners. So you have it in the book. Hootie hoo, breasts, tatas, tits, boobs, penis, cock, but this is stuff we can't talk about. But yeah, you're saying it's okay because it's in the library. Baloney. This is baloney.
Thank you, Ms. Heath.
You have power in the blood. That marks, I don't care if you are LGBT or a straight sex person or whatever. If you're a person that has been around Christians and you've been to church and you've sung that song, Power in the Blood, this mocks the Christian hymn. Openly a bisexual, earmuffs for muff diving, a 13-year-old, a 16-year-old really needs to do this? How can you guys really find this acceptable? You guys are homewreckers because you know that we've been talking about sex and porn.
I am going to ask you to. I'm going to ask you to limit your.
This is my time.
Yes, ma'am, it is your time, but in the interest of keeping things civil.
No.
No,
We don't
she has a
know.
legal
This is
right.
America.
No, you don't know us.
This
I'm
is
not
a
a
This is the
deal
United
breaker.
States.
We don't want to hear from you.
The court
We know where
affirmed
you
America's
stand.
profound national commitment to the
Okay.
principle of debate and public
All right,
issue should
so
be
you
unfailing,
guys-
robust, and wide open.
Do we
You want to have
security
porn
here,
and you
please?
want to have sex, right?
That's right.
Okay, I'm asking you to have
I'm
sex.
going to
you
ask
want
you to
anywhere
sit
near
down,
me.
please.
Where's the
Ms.
sheriff?
Hayden, I need for you to
I'm
sit
not
down,
touching
please.
you. These are good books.
Ms.
Maybe
Hayden,
you guys should.
we very
Would
much
you guys
appreciate your
like to
respectful
suggest
opinions.
having some
However,
good
this is
books that
not
you could
productive.
consider having more in our library than about sex? How about stuff that will help them through life,
Yes.
like careers and dreams and,
We have those books.
yeah, and we need some more. We need more than just about sex or porn.
Madam Chairman, I would bring up a point of order. I don't think this individual is speaking to the matter that's before this.
I was till you guys interrupted.
He seems to have gone on to a speech on another subject.
Peace on your business, not on the agenda. I agree.
It's
So
within
Ms.
the
Hayden, I
purview
think
of New York
we'll
Times
allow
versus
that to
Sutherland.
conclude your speaking time. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, well, then see, you're making a decision on not giving me my time to explain.
So continuing with the matter at hand, which is reconsideration of the book, the B word. Any further comment on the part of the board or questions?
I move to approve.
We have a motion to approve the appeal. Can I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor of approving the appeal, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. The motion does not carry. All right, our next section is the director's report.
Okay, so Darcy wrapped up a statewide youth services training and attended a symposium. I'm due to attend some strategic planning facilitator training. It was rescheduled. I believe that's a repeat item. I did have a meeting with Wyoming directors in Rollins that was very productive. The Public Library Association Conference is March 22nd through 26th. And depending on grant availability, we may be able to send a few people to it. In terms of providing services and products that meet the current and emerging needs of our community, we have James Chandler and Craig Johnson programs, which support Wyoming authors and are popular with our local patrons. And we have both authors appearing at separate times in December. We added, through the statewide databases, Scale Business Planner, which is a resource that new businesses can use to create a business plan. We have Sound Lab, Video Lab, databases, and assistance from our outstanding librarians to help support local business development. The library teen volunteers are getting ready to host a Scholastic Book Fair, and they man the booth and sell these books for Christmas presents to our patrons and staff. And then they take the proceeds from that and they support local youth agencies with some new books. The Creative Aging Grant was a huge hit with participants. I've gotten about a dozen comments from people who participated, said that Christine did a very outstanding job. There were several engaging oral history recordings and presentations that came out of that. We have tech classes to help patrons identify fake news and learn how to avoid viruses and malware on their computers. Our 3D printers were a huge attraction in November. Not sure what made that use go way up in November. Our teen clubs are a well-liked programming format for teens. We're continuing to work on expanded community awareness. We've been focusing on some mini themes for December, it's survival, and January's technology troubleshooting. In terms of facilities maintenance, our fob installation project contract was listed on the November 16th Commissioner's agenda, and I have spoken with Public Works, and that should hopefully be able to proceed sometime before the end of the year. Our go-live date for Tyler is now April 1st. We are exploring some options for online bill payments. We actually did take a look at Cersei Pay and Comprise features, and we are going to tour our Camplex to try to upgrade, get some upgrade ideas for our library meeting rooms. In terms of a safety report, we had fire extinguisher inspection that's pending, and we continue to participate in safety exercises on a variety of topics. Staff and library news, Paula Andre was promoted to the reference services manager position. And as part of the succession plan, she'll move into librarian classification once her master's is completed. Katie Remy was promoted to the branch services manager effective November 28th. We are currently recruiting in-house for a reference specialist. Some part-time positions are being filled with temporary assignments until we get more information on our fiscal year 22-23 budget. So we're waiting. We'll have more information in a couple of months. The Wyoming Library Association is developing statewide library support strategies based on the events here in Campbell County. The next page is a list of programs, workshops, and meetings that we had completed and the things that we're doing now or are ready to do. We currently have a quilt silent auction. It's a fundraiser for the Library Foundation. Several book discussions coming up. Santa Claus will be here on December the 8th. Young adult escape room coming. Lots of fun stuff. As you can see, our overdrive statistics continue to be very impressive. Our year-to-date already exceeds our 2020 usage. Our foundation will meet on November 29th. We're looking to recruit some members, and we're looking at a Bob Barlow art acquisition. And as a reminder, Bob Barlow is the one that curated a good chunk of our collection. Next meeting is for the Friends of the Library tomorrow. They're working on a bookmark contest, high school scholarships, and a lot of other nice supporting things for our programs. Our next meeting here is December 20th. And that concludes the director's report.
Questions or discussions on the part of the board? Thank you, Terry. So we are at 5:24. I believe our next portion is public presentations and correspondence. Terry, did you have any correspondence that we needed to cover? I didn't see any that came through this month via email that required.
Just today, we did get encouragement from the Yes House, just encouraging us and thanking us for what we do for the community just came today.
Thank you. All right, that moves us on to the public comment portion of the meeting. We have a couple of people signed up to speak about a variety of topics. I think in the interest of time, let's do 2 minutes per speaker. I will ask that the public comments refrain from grandstanding and from raising your voice and disrespectful comments. There's a way to communicate your concerns that doesn't include that, and I think it's in the best interest of the community that we stick with that. Our first speaker is Hugh Bennett, who would like to speak about book selection.
Good evening.
Turn it on.
Turn it on? Okay.
Terry, are you ready?
Are you ready?
It takes just a moment to. I
Okay.
apologize, 1 second.
I'd like to point out that with everybody here, if their time is worth minimum wage, we're about $1,000 an hour, okay? And I heard concern about having emails so the public could mail the board members directly, which is baffling to me. If you're serving the public, why wouldn't you want to hear from us? Interesting, Terry Leslie hasn't been receiving any emails until about a week ago. And if it need be, I have an extra 6 email addresses available to me with my VCN service. I'd be glad to donate them to the library so you can save some money on that. Additionally, I note there's concern about the fire extinguishers. I see lots of people working for the library wearing face masks. So I see a great concern for safety, maybe more than necessary in some cases, on almost every issue, except the minds of the children who can be corrupted by some of the information that you guys let through the gate. I have a suggestion. It might take an extra 30 seconds. But what if you took and sent out 100 forms to randomly selected library patrons, offering them an opportunity to volunteer to be on the selection board for the materials that are in question. I'm sure you guys are getting tired of us showing up, and we're tired of showing up. If we got 8 people chosen from those 100 who responded at random and added a county commissioner and a library board member and let them decide, that would be a committee worth using. The reason I suggest that is because to have Terry continue to run things is to get the same blockage that most of this board and the official director are providing. One other comment. You guys are serving the public, and that's this country, and all but one of you failed.
Mr. Bennett, that's the end of your time.
Yes, it is, but I have to respect. All but one of you failed to say the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. You should be allegiant to the
So our
community
next
you
is
serve.
Mr. Bennett.
Well said.
The next speaker is Helen Hayden, who would like to speak about library commons.
The only thing I would like to suggest at this time is if you're not going to do anything with the gender books, make a section for just that, so that innocent children that live a normal life don't have to see that, or their parents don't have to check them out. They can have their own section, and then you wouldn't be afraid of being sued for removing them.
Thank you, Ms. Hayden. Next is Kevin Bennett, who would like to talk about context.
All right. Speaking of context, I think if moving books from one intended audience to another is censorship, cutting our time is censorship in context. Speaking of context as well, 2 books were removed, Gender Queer and A Complete Guide to Sex and Disability, from the teen section to the adult section, even though the copy-pasted reason for rejection of our reconsideration requests would say that those are for a different audience, so there's complete hypocrisy there. Next, you mentioned that there are 2 lawn boys, and you're correct, but the Gary Paulson lawn boy encourages lying to the police to hide illegal immigrants. So while I don't think that necessarily predicates moving it, it is still pushing CRT on the sly. Now, the library staff clearly have a double standard, because you do not have 120 Days of Sodom by the Marquis de Sade in the adult section of our library. But you do have The Other Lawn Boy, which is about pedophilia in our library. And that's one of the reasons 120 Days of Sodom by the Marquis de Sade is not in this library. It's a banned book. I wonder why it's okay for you to use discretion to keep that book out, but not things that the community have said, hey, let's be more careful about this. Now, you pointed out, Miranda, that it's not commonplace to move books from the teenage section to the adult section. It's also not commonplace to encourage sexuality in children if you're an adult.
Right.
Now, maybe libraries do it, but you know, in Nazi Germany, they killed the Jews, didn't make it right. I mentioned the Nazis because D.G. Reardon called us Nazis, the county commissioner who's on your side, and he then killed our freedom of speech at the county commissioner meetings, kind of like how you cut down our time. So it's very hypocritical. Now, Terry Leslie is in a position of a conflict of interest, controlling like a bottleneck the access to the library board. You can set up email addresses for free or buy burner phones. Let's see.
I believe that's the end of your time. Thank
You
you,
may
Mr.
well be
Bennett.
right. All right, well, that's all I had to say. I think you guys need to do the right thing.
Next is Ed Sisti, who would speak about psychological effects.
Just recently, a letter was written to the Campbell County Commissioners by a concerned resident who is also a board-certified psychiatrist and works at our hospital, which means we value his professional opinion enough for the county to pay him to provide, as a medical doctor, expertise in medical health. The doctor, commenting on the present debate about whether sexually explicit materials should be made available to children and adolescents in our library, he said, I have been asked to provide my professional opinion on the matter. Specifically, I've been asked to exposure of pornographic, sexually explicit media that is in our library has the potential to cause psychological harm to this apparent target audience of minors. In a word, yes, he said. Then it left him several questions to ask. Number one, Must the motives of those adults, what are they to make these attempts to prematurely sexualize children? Number two, would you want to do psychological harm? Why would you want to do psychological harm to developing brains? Number three, a reasonable person would rightly question whether these initiatives and the resistance of the governing board to correct the problem represents a more sinister form of social engineering. The doctor finishes by saying, I believe that the introduction of pornographic material into the children and adolescent sections of the library should be a call to arms for the parents and reasonable adults in this community. Protecting our children is a duty. It is apparent that we cannot rely upon federal, state, and government to provide that protection, that duty, as it should be falls primarily to the community. So the community stands before you today, understands that you think that the challenge process is just about over. How can it be when only 2 books have been moved out of the 56 book challenges that have been made? Is that any progress towards good mental health that the psychiatrist was talking about? Be it known today that we will never stop challenging these sexual inappropriate books and children and adolescents, and we demand today that they be removed from the audiences, that they were purposed to socially engineer. God save our children.
Amen.
Susan Sisti, sexual perversion in children's areas.
Well, I want to say that we've been coming for months and we have better things to do and you're not listening to us.
Yeah.
Not listening, and I heard your plan for the new, excuse me, panel to discuss books, and I am vehemently opposed to Miranda Finn being in any kind of position of authority, because we have her on video saying that she supports showing 2 minors how to use and buy sex toys, oral and anal sex. She's hostile to morality. She believes in casual sex, lesbian sex. Every kind of sex is fine for children because this book is gay. Don't laugh. It's on video.
Not funny to you, I don't know.
It's on video. We don't trust her. We don't trust Darcy Accord. And this is a circus, Terry Leslie. You're not doing anything. And I know your collection process is the problem. We do not care what other states are doing. We're Wyoming. And we will not trust your process with her and Darcy Accord on it. It's biased from the beginning. The whole problem is the judgment and the collection process of the library. And we need the collection process out. We need to talk about it at one of these meetings because it needs to be changed. We do not care what your organizations give awards to because they're far left and we all know it. We've all been researching this. We know what's going on and we want it stopped. It's never right to teach children morality. And in South Carolina, it was obvious that there's either a lack or a breakdown in existing oversight of screening materials. And that's what's happening here. And we do not buy your little protocol you put out of it's completely acceptable. Because you work for us. And we say it's not acceptable. And we will not accept anything she's over. It'll be biased from the beginning. Thank you.
And our last speaker is Priscilla Hickson.
Hello. As I think about our culture, you think about our culture, are you familiar with advertising? We look around, we live in a sea of advertising as I look around. Do you realize that it's a big business, United States? In 2019, that's the most recent year I could get it for because COVID messed up in 20, there was $240 billion spent in advertising. Now think, why would that be? Why would people spend so much on advertising? Maybe because they think that what people hear and see and read affects their behavior. There's all kinds of studies. They want to do this color or this color. Which one's going to get more results? this word or that word, this landscape or this other landscape. They do all kinds of studies to see which one is going to affect the behavior, which oftentimes is buying things. I mean, even the library, you pay for advertisement because you want somebody to come to this or that or the other. You know, Facebook doesn't do it for free. The newspaper doesn't do it for free. So I assume you aren't getting it for free. So, to assume that all this material that these young children are reading doesn't affect their behavior flies in the face of this $240 billion advertising that is spent in the United States. Oh dear, I'm going to cry. Oh, I hate that when I cry. There's a man named James Allen who in the early 1900s says, as a man thinketh, so he is in his heart. So what you're encouraging these young people to think of, even if they want to know the questions, you're promoting their dwelling on it and engaging in it. And
That's all of your time, Ms. Hazen. Thank you so much.
My name was on the list. Can I speak? I was on the list.
There's a second page.
And Lyle Austin was
There were
on the
several of
list,
us
too.
who were on
I didn't
I was
get
on the list.
but I was
never
late.
mind, sorry.
But I was also on the list.
Under what name?
Patty Junick is mine.
We have a Patty Judick on here, but there's not any contact information.
Oh, I
That's not
didn't-
legally necessary.
I didn't know I needed to put that.
No, it's not legally necessary by Wyoming statutes. You can Google it right now if you'd like.
You guys still haven't contacted me?
Anyone on the board have objections to listening to comments without the identifying information?
I can fill it in.
Point of order, they don't legally have
You don't
to
get
do
a call
that.
point of order.
Yes,
if
I
you're on
do.
the board.
I
So the
do.
only
I'm a
board members
citizen.
can call point of order.
Yeah, you don't get a call, you don't get
to do
the.
that.
Hey, I talked to you outside earlier.
Why don't you sit down?
Well, Mr. Clark, because this is
I'm gonna have to
the
ask
thing
for
to say.
order.
My point of order is to address
And I'm
the
gonna have to
comments
ask
on the
you-
meeting, and my name is on there. I couldn't put what my topic was till I heard what happened at the meeting. I'm Susan Bennett, and I want to address the address just like.
I don't have a Susan Bennett on this
Well,
list.
It's right above my name.
It's at the bottom. I signed it right up.
Just Susan? Or, yeah.
Is that what that says?
That's me, yeah, that's me right there. Okay, and I don't have my topic is everything that's been talked about here.
You talk about censorship, God help us.
I had some handouts I wanted to bring to you, and she's gonna pass them out. And I just want to know when the board and the administration, what measures you're going to take to address the matters of preventing pornography and other obscene content from entering our state-funded public libraries. And I want to know what you're doing as a board and what policies you're making to protect children from pornography and also from going through the content you already have in the library to make sure there is no obscenity or pornographic material in the children's library right now. And I want to know that you guys, last time I was here, some of you said you were professionals and you said you were experts and others of you said you were inexperienced. You need to pick a lane. If you're going to be professional and experts, and you're going to have a children's department, most every argument that you had for keeping those books were assuming you had the mental knowledge and the problem-solving abilities to make good choices for books. When parents send children to the children's library, we expect trustworthiness and transparency. Everything you decided at this meeting, the way you communicate with the public, not transparent. The way you form your committees within your system. You need to include the entire community, and you need to include parents, professionals that are in good standing with the community. We've had doctors and teachers and professionals address this panel, and you guys need to include us in these book selections when it comes to our children and have adequate filters that are appropriate for children, because none of those things that you said about the reasons you're keeping those books apply to minors, to children. And we trust you as our representatives to do a better job. I expect better policies and accountability from this board and this administration on what you're doing to keep this material out of our children's department. If you're going to encourage children to come in, what are you doing to protect those children? That's what I want to know. Thank you.
Three more speakers. as Tom Johnson.
Is Don still here?
So we'll move on to Patty Junick. Please.
I think we're almost into evening. Good evening. I just want to say how sad and disappointed and frustrated that I am, as I'm sure most everybody in this room is, over all the actions the last few months. And when I look at the audience, they're all pretty much my generation, and some of you board members are. And I'm just disappointed that in Gillette, Wyoming, we can't agree to what we were raised with, what was immoral. I'm frustrated that it wasn't handled back in July with openness, that our library is public, and as was said, you serve the public, and why it wasn't open. I'm not saying I agree with everything that's happened and the order it's happened, but I just think that it should have been a lot more open to the public comments and concerns and addressed civilly. And none of this has been civil. None of it. I've talked to several other people who feel the same way. It's just not how it should be done from anybody, even the board, everybody. I lost my notes, which doesn't mean anything because I'm not going by it. Oops. I lost them. But one of the things I'm extremely concerned about is the choice of the committee. Number one, it was voted on at the last meeting, and yet you're just bringing it up again. That's a whole month. And the second thing is that why is that committee not including people from both sides of this room?
Could the board members stop texting, please, and listen to the speaker?
I
Give her more time.
Thank
With a
you.
family emergency, it's none of your business.
I'm sorry, it is our business if we're sitting here and you are the appointed board, and I don't mean difficulties.
That's the
That's
remainder
not
of your
what I
time.
want.
Thank you.
Well, my time was interrupted.
Yes.
Boy, that didn't go like I thought.
The last speaker is Deb Proctor. Thank you.
I'm here to thank the Campbell County Library Board for being true to their mission, which says to provide diverse cultural opportunities for reading, learning, entertainment to all citizens of our community. It also, in the policy, which I very strongly support, says that we should provide diverse, well-maintained fiction and non-print collection, balancing information, educational, and entertainment objectives. Thank you. I'm grateful that you've had the strength to listen to all this nonsense and act accordingly. Thank you, Holly, for being a strong leader and chairman. You've done a great job. To those people here that are objecting to what's in the library board,
I can't hear what that
I would like
aspect.
you to remind you that this library has a wonderful policy where if you would like to add additional materials or you have suggestions, they have a card you can fill out. Please try to use that. If you have ideas, I've suggested this before in past issues of what's in a library, use it if you have ideas rather than bringing the objections and the nonsense has gone on. But thank you, board. Thank you, thank you. It's a trying times. I appreciate your efforts, your energy, your work. I appreciate it.
That concludes our public comments, and that's the last item on the agenda.
Motion to adjourn?
We have a motion. Can I get a second? A motion and a second to adjourn. Any opposed? No. Favor? Aye. Aye. We're adjourned. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, I know. That's me.